I love you no matter what. Those 6 words burst from Victoria's lips like a spark, lighting up a moment that would change her life forever. Victoria wasn't the type to hold back feelings. She was goofy, adventurous, and free-spirited. Fresh out of university, she felt like life was a canvas waiting for bold, unpredictable strokes. In her mind, each day was a chance to explore something new, to laugh until her cheeks hurt, and to live fully without regrets. That day, as she stood at a bustling charity event organized by her beloved Aunt for the Disabled, her heart was light, but she carried an undercurrent of longing for something more. Her eyes wandered over the crowd, noticing how the atmosphere buzzed with stories of courage and resilience. It was then that she spotted him, a man in a wheelchair, sitting alone on a bench, looking lost amid the festivities. Even in the throng of people, he seemed like a quiet island, shielded by his own thoughts. There was an air of mystery about him that made Victoria pause. She wasn't sure what pulled her closer, but something deep inside nudged her to bridge that gap. With her trademark warm smile and a heart open as the summer sky, she decided to approach him, ready to say hello. Little did she know that simple, heartfelt greeting would mark the start of something big, a journey of friendship, understanding, and love that would soon turn her world upside down. In that moment, Victoria was all about living in the now, and meeting him felt like fate stepping in. The seed was planted, and the future was about to unfold in ways neither of them could ever imagine. The charity event was buzzing with excitement as Victoria strolled through the venue. Volunteers mingled with guests, and laughter filled the air. She'd always loved these events, finding beauty in every smile and every shared story. Working with her aunt had taught her that every life had a story worth cherishing, and today was no exception. Amid the gentle hum of conversations and soft background music, Victoria's eyes caught sight of a man who stood apart, Xander. Xander was a figure of quiet dignity, his gaze wandering over the room as if he were searching for something he couldn't name. Just months before, an accident had changed his life, leaving him confined to a wheelchair and retreating him from the bustling world he once led. Once the charismatic CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, he now spent his days working from the solitude of his home, avoiding crowds and harsh stares. Today, though, he had agreed to attend the event hosted by his own company, a small step toward reconnecting with the world he had shunned. Victoria, with her natural curiosity and warmth, couldn't help but notice him sitting alone by the entrance. His eyes held a hint of sadness and strength, a mix that intrigued her instantly. Without a second thought, she made her way over, her steps light and determined. As she approached, her smile widened, and her heart pounded with excitement and a touch of nervousness. She wondered if maybe, just maybe, this was the chance to brighten someone's day. In that moment, Victoria resolved to bring a bit of her contagious joy to this lonely soul, unaware that this simple act of kindness would start a dramatic chapter in both their lives. When Victoria finally reached Xander, she was surprised by the initial silence. Xander's eyes flickered with a mix of caution and curiosity, as if he wasn't used to someone being so genuine in his presence. "Hi, I'm Victoria," she said, her tone light and friendly. "I just couldn't help but notice you were all by yourself. Mind if I sit with you?" Her words, wrapped in warmth and sincerity, broke through the quiet. Xander, who had spent too long hiding behind the confines of his chair and the shadow of his past, felt something stir. There was something about her energy that was hard to ignore. For a few awkward moments, Xander simply nodded, his expression unreadable. Inside, he wrestled with the urge to retreat and the surprising comfort of her presence. Victoria, undeterred by his initial reserve, continued chatting about trivial things: the weather, the lively crowd, and the small wonders of the day. She talked about her own quirks and her passion for exploring life, hoping to draw him out of his shell. Every so often, she'd catch his eye and smile, as if saying, "I'm here, and I care." Xander's silence slowly melted away as he began to share bits of his story. It wasn't easy for him to open up. He was used to a life of strict routines and guarded emotions. Yet, as Victoria's cheerful words and genuine laughter filled the space between them, he found himself drawn to her. There was no pretense, no judgment, just two souls meeting on equal ground. In that quiet corner of the event, a connection began to form. A spark that hinted at something deeper, something that might just change both their lives forever. Victoria's charm wasn't something she flaunted. It was natural, effortless, and downright contagious. Sitting next to Xander, She started recounting small adventures from her college days. The silly pranks, the late-night pizza runs, and the unexpected moments that made her laugh until her sides hurt. Xander listened, initially reserved, but soon a small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. It wasn't often that he encountered someone who made him feel less like a spectator in his own life. The room buzzed around them, yet they were in a world of their own. Victoria noticed the way Xander's eyes softened when he listened, as if he was letting go of the heavy burdens he'd carried for too long. "Life's too short for holding back," she said with a playful shrug. "You gotta grab every chance to smile, even if things aren't perfect." Her words resonated with Xander, who had spent years locked away in his own sorrow and isolation. Slowly, the ice that had encased his heart began to crack. Victoria's genuine interest in his well-being wasn't something he expected. Instead of pity, she offered understanding, a friendly nudge that said, "I get it, but maybe it's time to try living again." As she talked, Xander's mind replayed memories of a time when he too had been fearless, when success and ambition had defined his days. Now, with every word Victoria spoke, he felt the pull of a life he'd forgotten. The event around them seemed to fade into the background, leaving just the two of them in a bubble of newfound connection. Victoria's laughter, bright and unguarded, filled the silence between them, and for the first time in a long while, Xander felt like he was truly seen. After that day, Victoria couldn't shake off the feeling that meeting Xander was no accident. Every time she thought back to the moment, her heart would swell with hope and excitement. Xander, for his part, was equally conflicted. His mind churned with memories of better times, yet his body was a reminder of what he'd lost. Despite his reluctance, his thoughts kept drifting back to Victoria's infectious smile and her relentless kindness. It was like she had chipped away at the walls he'd built around himself over the years. Over the next few weeks, they began to exchange messages. Their texts were casual and fun, sprinkled with playful teasing and genuine concern. Victoria's words, written with her signature mix of humor and heart, became a bright spot in Xander's otherwise muted days. He'd find himself looking at his phone, wondering if she'd sent a new message, a simple, "Hey, how's your day?" that made everything seem just a bit lighter. Each conversation was like a tiny victory against the isolation he'd grown so used to. Victoria would often recall the day they met as if it were a scene in a movie, one where fate had taken a daring leap to connect two lost souls. Her free spirit didn't judge him for his past or his current struggles. Instead, she embraced him, imperfections and all. It wasn't long before Xander started opening up about the accident, his regrets, and the guilt that often shadowed him. With every honest word, Victoria would offer a reassuring smile and say, "Hey, we all have our scars, but that's what makes us human." Her empathy and straightforwardness were a balm to Xander's wounded pride, making him realize that maybe, just maybe, he could step back into a world he'd left behind. In the following days, Victoria took it upon herself to visit the charity organization more often. She loved being around people who had stories of courage even in the face of adversity, and she believed every person deserves a chance to heal. Her aunt's organization was full of warm souls, each with their own battles and triumphs. For Victoria, it was the perfect backdrop to nurture her own dreams of making a difference. Every smile she encountered, every heartfelt thanks, only made her more determined to bring hope into someone's life, especially Xander's. Meanwhile, Xander found himself slowly stepping out of his comfort zone. Although his days were usually filled with solitary work at home, he began to set aside time to attend small gatherings, always keeping an eye out for Victoria's familiar presence. Her messages, light-hearted and full of life, pushed him to embrace moments that reminded him of who he used to be before the accident. "Maybe it's time to let go of all that self-doubt," he'd whisper to himself as he scrolled through old photos of happier times. One crisp afternoon, Victoria stopped by the charity center unexpectedly. The building was alive with energy, and as she chatted with the volunteers, her eyes constantly searched for that special someone. When she finally saw Xander sitting quietly in a corner, engrossed in his thoughts, she felt a mix of determination and empathy. Walking over with her usual spark, she sat down next to him without a second thought. "Hey, how's it going?" she asked casually, her tone light but full of genuine care. Xander hesitated for a moment, then replied in a soft voice, "Better now that you're here." In that instant, the air between them shifted, a subtle promise of healing and hope. As weeks turned into months, Victoria and Xander's connection grew deeper. Their texts turned into long phone calls that lasted into the night, filled with laughter, shared memories, and vulnerable confessions. Victoria, with her unfiltered candor, told him about her goofy college days, her wild dreams, and the little mishaps that always seemed to end in laughter. Xander listened, sometimes chuckling, sometimes pausing to let the words sink in. It wasn't just the humor that drew him in. It was the sheer authenticity behind every story. Xander, once a man who avoided the spotlight, began to share snippets of his past as well. He talked about his rise in the business world, the pressure of being a CEO, and the accident that shattered his confident facade. Though he still wrestled with feelings of inadequacy, every conversation with Victoria helped him see that he wasn't defined solely by his hardships. In her company, he rediscovered a side of himself that had long been buried beneath layers of doubt. During one memorable evening, as the city lights twinkled outside his window, Xander found himself smiling for reasons he hadn't known in years. Victoria's voice over the phone was like a gentle reminder that life wasn't just about struggles. It was also about those unexpected moments of beauty. "I used to think that success was about having everything together," he admitted one night. "But maybe it's really about letting someone in, flaws and all." Victoria's response was simple and sincere. "That's exactly it. We're all a little broken, but that's what makes us real." Their conversations became a safe space where both could drop the masks they'd been forced to wear, and slowly, the distance between them began to vanish. As the season changed, bringing cooler evenings and a hint of winter's promise, Victoria received an invitation that both thrilled and surprised her. One day, while she was wrapping up a successful day at the charity center, she got a call from Xander. His voice, usually measured and calm, was filled with a rare excitement. "Victoria, how'd you like to join me for an evening at our company's gala?" he asked. It was a bold invitation, one that meant stepping into a world she'd only seen from afar. A world of high stakes, business suits, and corporate glitz. Victoria laughed softly, her casual tone laced with genuine curiosity. "Sure, why not? I could use a little adventure," she replied, her heart fluttering with anticipation. Accepting the invitation wasn't just about attending an event. It was about embracing a part of Xander's life that he'd kept hidden for too long. That night, as she walked into the gala hall, Victoria couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the polished surroundings and her own carefree style. Yet she felt right at home. Xander, waiting in a quiet corner away from the swirling crowd, caught sight of her and smiled. A smile that carried layers of relief and admiration. In that moment, he realized that her presence had a way of softening the harsh edges of his reality. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting second, the noise of the gala faded away. It was just the two of them, sharing an unspoken understanding. Throughout the evening, Victoria navigated the event with ease, striking up conversations with colleagues, and even making a few jokes about the glitzy atmosphere. Xander couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, seeing her embrace this world with such authenticity. By the end of the night, as the gala lights dimmed, it was clear that the invitation had been more than a social call. It was a turning point for both of them. After the gala, things felt different. The night had left echoes in both their hearts, quiet promises of new beginnings and the thrill of unforeseen possibilities. On the ride home, Victoria couldn't stop replaying the moments she'd shared with Xander. His guarded demeanor had softened, and for the first time, he seemed almost hopeful. "It was such a fun night," she texted him later that evening, the words carrying a warmth that felt genuine. Xander's reply was simple yet profound. "I can't remember the last time I felt this alive." That simple message struck a chord with Victoria. It wasn't just about the gala or the glimmer of corporate life. It was about rediscovering parts of themselves they'd long forgotten. Over cups of cheap coffee the next morning, they recounted their favorite parts of the night. Victoria laughed about a clumsy moment on the dance floor, while Xander admitted he'd been fascinated by her unfiltered spirit amidst all the pretentiousness. In their honest exchange, barriers crumbled further and the weight of loneliness began to lift. For Victoria, the evening had confirmed what she'd always believed. Every person, no matter how lost or broken, deserves a chance to shine. For Xander, it was a glimpse of life beyond his self-imposed isolation, a life filled with warmth, laughter, and real connections. Their shared moments that night were more than just memories, they were stepping stones to a future where both could be true to themselves. Even as the day wore on, the echoes of the night lingered, gently nudging them towards something brighter and more hopeful. In the weeks that followed, their growing bond began to weave into the fabric of everyday life. Every call, every meeting at the charity center, and every unexpected encounter served as a reminder that change was possible. For Victoria, each day was an adventure, a mix of simple joys and moments that felt almost magical. She kept a small journal, jotting down the little things that made her smile, and Xander soon found himself reading snippets of her thoughts. It was like peeking into a world where hope and humor reigned, a stark contrast to the lonely routine he'd settled into. Victoria's enthusiasm wasn't just a fleeting spark, it was a steady flame that warmed the hearts of those around her. When she spoke of her dreams, her eyes would light up, and even in her most casual moments, she carried an air of determination. For Xander, her influence was like a gentle whisper encouraging him to break free from his own self-doubt. "I used to think I was stuck," he once admitted during a quiet evening chat, "but now I see that maybe I can start over." That confession was a turning point, a sign that he was ready to embrace life, no matter the scars he bore. As summer fades into fall, the two of them began planning little outings, picnics in the park, quiet walks by the river, and even days spent volunteering at the charity center. With every shared laugh and every heartfelt conversation, they discovered that even in the midst of life's storms, there was always a chance for a fresh start. In their eyes, the future looked a lot brighter, filled with the promise of new beginnings and the unyielding support of someone who truly cared. As autumn deepened, Victoria and Xander's lives continued to blend in ways neither had imagined. While their connection grew stronger, life wasn't all smooth sailing. At work, Victoria began to notice that not everyone welcomed her fresh perspective. Some colleagues eyed her with skepticism, questioning how a charity volunteer could really grasp corporate nuances. It stung a bit, but she brushed it off with her trademark grin. "I'm here to learn and make a difference, not to play office politics," she'd say with a laugh. Meanwhile, Xander wrestled with his own inner conflicts. Though he'd come a long way from his days of isolation, his old insecurities still reared their head during board meetings and private conversations. Sometimes he'd catch himself flinching at a harsh comment or a dismissive glance from someone in his company. Victoria noticed these moments too, and after long, late-night talks, they'd both admit that the real challenge wasn't just the business world, it was battling the demons of their past. During one particular afternoon, a heated discussion about company strategy turned into a moment of vulnerability for Xander. "I still feel like I'm not enough sometimes," he confessed to Victoria in a rare moment of raw honesty. Instead of offering cliches, Victoria squeezed his hand and said, "Hey, nobody's perfect. I love you no matter what, remember." That simple reassurance lit a spark within him, a reminder that even in the midst of professional and personal challenges, love could be the anchor that kept him grounded. The day ended with them sharing a quiet dinner at a local diner, talking about fears, hopes, and the messy beauty of life. Even when things got tough, they learned that facing challenges together made the future feel a little less daunting. Even with the hurdles they encountered, laughter became the secret ingredient in Victoria and Xander's everyday routine. It was those little, spontaneous bursts of humor that helped them navigate the ups and downs of life. One crisp evening, after a long day of back-to-back meetings and heavy discussions, they found themselves sprawled on a park bench under a canopy of twinkling streetlights. Xander, usually so reserved, cracked a joke about his outdated tie collection, and soon Victoria was laughing so hard her eyes welled up. That night, amidst the soft murmur of the city, they talked about the silly moments that had dotted their days. Victoria shared stories of her misadventures at work, accidentally sending a humorous meme to a stern boss or tripping over her own feet during a rushed walk to a meeting. Xander, too, recalled moments when he'd tried to lighten the mood with a poorly timed quip that ended in a room full of awkward silence. Their laughter echoed in the night air, dissolving the tension that had built up over weeks of professional stress. A way to pass the time, it was a lifeline. It reminded them that despite the heavy responsibilities at work, and the lingering scars of the past, life was meant to be enjoyed. Victoria often said, "We're all just a bunch of beautifully flawed humans trying to make it through another day." And in those honest, laughter-filled moments, Xander couldn't help but agree. Their shared chuckles became a promise, a commitment to face life's uncertainties with a smile and a heart full of hope. In that gentle light of humor and understanding, they found a deeper connection that made every challenge seem a little bit easier to bear. As winter crept in, the company's annual reorganization was announced. A shakeup that meant new roles and fresh challenges for everyone, including Victoria. Having proved herself as a reliable and innovative thinker, she was soon tapped to head a key division. The news brought both excitement and anxiety. At home, she confided in Xander, "I'm thrilled, but I can't help feeling like I'm stepping into unknown territory." Xander, ever her rock, responded with a warm smile and a playful squeeze of her hand. "You're going to rock it, just like you always do." In the boardroom, however, the pressure was intense. Long hours and high expectations became the norm. Some board members questioned her unconventional ideas, while others admired her fresh approach. Victoria had to learn how to balance assertiveness with empathy, a tricky dance in the corporate world. Her days were filled with brainstorming sessions, tense negotiations, and the constant hum of urgent emails. Despite the whirlwind, she kept her genuine spirit intact, never losing sight of why she'd come this far. Meanwhile, Xander, adjusting to his new role as her partner in business, found himself relearning how to lead from behind the scenes. Even though he was once the face of the company, he now had to support Victoria's bold vision while grappling with his own lingering doubts. During one late night at the office, after a particularly challenging meeting, he admitted to her, "Sometimes, I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by stepping back." Victoria laughed softly and replied, "Hey, we're in this together. Your strength and my drive, that's all we need." Their late-night conversations became a ritual, a time to regroup, share a laugh, and remind each other of their unyielding partnership, both in business and in life. Spring arrived like a breath of fresh air, coaxing new beginnings from even the frostiest hearts. With the change of season, Victoria and Xander decided to take a short break from the hectic pace of work. They planned a weekend getaway to a quiet lakeside cabin, a chance to test the waters of a simpler, slower life away from boardrooms and deadlines. The idea excited them both. It felt like a small rebellion against the pressures of their daily routines. The cabin, nestled among tall pines and overlooking a mirror-like lake, was a stark contrast to the sleek, modern lines of the corporate world. The air was filled with the scent of fresh pine and the gentle murmur of water lapping against the shore. Here, they could be themselves, no titles, no expectations, just two people reconnecting with nature and with each other. During long walks by the lake, Victoria laughed as she recounted childhood stories of camping trips gone hilariously wrong. Xander, usually so guarded, shared memories of days spent fishing with his late father, a story that brought tears to his eyes. Their time away from work allowed them to rediscover the simple joys of life. They cooked together on a small wood-burning stove, talked for hours about their dreams, and even danced under the stars on a clear night. The getaway wasn't just a break, it was a reminder that no matter how tangled life got, there was always time to breathe, laugh, and appreciate the little moments. As the weekend drew to a close, both knew that these quiet hours had strengthened their bond. The lessons learned by the tranquil lake would help them navigate the inevitable challenges back in the corporate world, keeping their hearts light and their spirits resilient. Back in the hustle and bustle of daily life, the calm after the getaway didn't last long. A sudden crisis hit the company, a major deal fell through, and the pressure on Victoria's new role spiked. The fallout sent ripples throughout the organization, and for a while, even Xander's steady presence seemed a bit shaken. Late nights turned into early mornings as the team scrambled to salvage what they could. Victoria's determination, however, never wavered even as doubt crept in. "We've got this," she'd tell herself, trying to mask the worry in her eyes with a confident smile. For Xander, the storm stirred old fears he thought he'd left behind. The accident, the retreat, the years of isolation, it all seemed to echo in his mind as he struggled with the possibility of failure. One evening, after a particularly rough day, he sat alone in his study, staring blankly at the rain-soaked window. The sound of raindrops tapping against the glass felt like nature's own lament. Victoria found him there, his face etched with worry. Without a word, she sat beside him and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Hey, we're stronger than any storm," she whispered. Her words, soft but resolute, broke through his despair. Together, they worked tirelessly to re-strategize and rebuild confidence within the team. Each setback was met with a dose of Victoria's relentless optimism and Xander's newfound resolve. Their late-night brainstorming sessions became a blend of creative problem-solving and heartfelt sharing, where every challenge was tackled with a mix of humor and raw honesty. In the midst of the storm, they discovered that vulnerability wasn't a weakness, it was the key to resilience. And so, as the company slowly began to find its footing again, Victoria and Xander emerged not unscathed, but stronger and more connected than ever. With the crisis gradually under control, the company entered a phase of rebuilding, an effort that demanded not only new strategies but also a rekindling of trust among its people. Victoria took the lead, organizing team-building sessions that mixed work with moments of genuine connection. Over casual lunches and informal meetings, she encouraged everyone to share not just ideas but also stories about themselves. "We're not just colleagues," she'd say, "we're a team that's going through this together." Her words resonated deeply with many, slowly mending the fractures that the crisis had left behind. Xander, observing from the sidelines, found himself both proud and humbled. He recalled the days when he'd ruled the boardroom with an iron fist, but now he saw that true leadership meant inspiring confidence and showing vulnerability. One afternoon, during a particularly spirited team discussion, a young employee hesitantly mentioned feeling overlooked. Victoria immediately knelt down to the employee's level, assuring them that every voice mattered. That simple act of empathy rippled through the room, rebuilding the trust that had once seemed lost. Later that evening, Xander and Victoria sat together in a quiet conference room, reflecting on the day's progress. "It's amazing what a little honesty can do," Xander remarked, his tone softer than usual. Victoria nodded. "Trust is like a garden, it needs care, time, and a bit of faith." Their conversation drifted to memories of the early days when they'd first met and discovered that genuine connection could overcome even the toughest challenges. In that moment, they realized that rebuilding trust wasn't just about fixing a company, it was about healing themselves. With every sincere conversation and every shared smile, they were creating a new foundation for a brighter future. Amid the busy pace of turning the company around, Victoria and Xander found time to reflect on how far they'd come. Late one evening, as the office lights dimmed and only a few remained burning, they sat side by side on a quiet balcony. The soft hum of the city below provided a comforting backdrop as they revisited old memories, both the painful and the joyful ones. Victoria recalled the day they'd met at the charity event, how a chance encounter had blossomed into a deep, life-changing connection. Xander's mind wandered back to his lonely days before her arrival, days filled with silence and regret. In that reflective mood, they shared stories that few others ever heard. Victoria talked about her dreams of exploring every corner of life, how each small adventure had taught her something about herself. Xander, with quiet intensity, spoke of lessons learned from past failures, of the courage it took to accept help and open up to love. There was a raw honesty in those conversations, a mutual understanding that the scars of the past were a part of who they were, but not the whole story. As the night deepened, they made a pact to never let fear dictate their choices. "We've come too far to be held back by what-ifs," Victoria said, her voice firm yet gentle. Xander agreed, feeling a newfound strength in the promise they made to each other. They decided that each year, on a night just like this, they'd take time to reflect and celebrate their journey, acknowledging both the struggles and the triumphs. In that quiet moment of introspection, surrounded by soft city lights and the gentle whisper of the wind, they found solace and inspiration for the challenges ahead. Just when things seemed to be settling into a hopeful rhythm, life threw them another curveball. One brisk morning, Victoria received an unexpected call from an old friend, someone from her university days who was now a renowned journalist. This friend had heard whispers of the company's recent challenges and was intrigued by the human story behind the headlines. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Victoria agreed to an interview that promised to spotlight the transformation happening within the company and, by extension, her own journey. The interview quickly became the talk of the town. As the story hit the local news, it painted a vivid picture of a company reborn from crisis, fueled by genuine compassion and relentless determination. Victoria was thrust into the spotlight, her personal and professional life becoming a narrative that many found inspiring. For Xander, the sudden attention stirred old insecurities. He worried that the media might pry into aspects of his past he'd rather keep hidden. Yet, seeing Victoria's fearless openness reminded him that vulnerability was a strength, not a weakness. During a quiet dinner that evening, as they sat together absorbing the media frenzy, Victoria reassured him with a warm smile. "Sometimes a twist of fate is exactly what we need," she said softly, squeezing his hand. The experience taught them that life was unpredictable and that sometimes the unexpected could pave the way for even greater growth. With newfound resolve, they embraced the whirlwind, prepared to show the world that behind every headline was a story of resilience, love, and the courage to change. As the media buzz settled, the company's rapid recovery caught the eye of investors and competitors alike. The newfound attention brought opportunities and pressures that tested both Victoria and Xander in fresh ways. The board began pushing for bolder moves, sometimes clashing with the cautious, empathetic approach that had brought them this far. Meetings grew more intense and whispers of corporate takeovers began circulating. It felt as though every decision carried a weight of consequence, threatening to upend the delicate balance they had worked so hard to restore. Victoria found herself torn between her big dreams for the company and the realistic challenges of an ever-changing business landscape. Late nights at the office became the norm, and while her passion burned bright, there were moments when doubt crept in. Am I pushing too hard? She'd wonder quietly, feeling the strain of constant expectation. Xander, ever the supportive partner, stepped in whenever the pressure mounted. We're in this together, he'd remind her, echoing the mantra they'd held onto through thick and thin. Yet, the ambitious new direction wasn't without its costs. Friendships at work became strained as employees navigated the shifting priorities, and some of the team began to question whether ambition was worth the sacrifice of their close-knit culture. The very traits that had once defined the company's charm were now at risk of being overshadowed by the drive for profit. One evening, after a particularly heated strategy meeting, Victoria and Xander sat in silence on a quiet balcony. It was in that stillness they realized that ambition, while necessary, needed balance. With hearts heavy but resolute, they vowed to find a middle path, one that honored both progress and the human connections that made the company truly special. In the wake of intense boardroom battles and market pressures, Victoria began to see the beauty in imperfection, both in herself and in the company she helped shape. The stress of relentless ambition had taken its toll on everyone, and it became clear that the key to success wasn't about striving for an unattainable ideal, but rather about embracing the messy, unpredictable nature of life. One late evening, after a day filled with challenging decisions, Victoria decided to host an informal gathering for the team. It wasn't a meeting, but rather a chance for everyone to let their guard down, share a laugh, and remember that they were more than just cogs in a corporate machine. The event was set in a cozy space with mismatched chairs and string lights, a far cry from the sterile conference rooms of the day. As colleagues mingled and swapped stories, Victoria shared her own missteps and triumphs, reminding everyone that mistakes were simply stepping stones to growth. Xander, watching from the sidelines with a proud smile, realized that his journey from isolation to a renewed sense of purpose was woven into every laugh and every tear shared that night. We're all a little broken, and that's perfectly fine, Victoria said, raising a toast. Her words resonated deeply with the team, sparking honest conversations and a renewed sense of unity. That night, as the party wound down and the team slowly drifted away, Victoria and Xander sat quietly together, reflecting on the evening. In that soft glow of shared imperfection, they knew that life would always have its ups and downs. What mattered was that they faced it together, unafraid to be vulnerable and real. Their journey was far from over, but they had learned that true strength came from embracing every flaw, every scar, and from loving each other unconditionally. Just when things seemed to have settled into a steady groove, a fresh wave of change swept through both their personal and professional worlds. Victoria noticed that the company's renewed reputation was drawing in new opportunities, but it also brought more eyes, some friendly, others full of hidden agendas. It wasn't long before whispers of a major merger started circulating, sending shockwaves through the boardroom and stirring up a mix of excitement and anxiety among the team. For Victoria, every new challenge felt like a test of her true grit. She'd always believed in leading with heart, but now she found herself balancing that soft touch with the need for tough, strategic decisions. Over late-night coffee runs and endless brainstorming sessions, she and Xander began mapping out what the merger might mean for the future, both for the company and for them as a couple. Xander, who had come a long way from his days of isolation, now found himself pushed back into the spotlight. He wrestled with doubts about whether he was ready to face all the scrutiny that came with these changes. Yet, every time those thoughts crept in, Victoria's warm, "I love you no matter what," would echo in his mind, reminding him that together they could handle anything. Outside the office, life had its own lessons. Friends and family noticed the shift, a spark in Victoria's eyes and a renewed determination in Xander's voice. They were no longer just surviving, they were embracing the chaos and growth with a newfound strength. Even on the toughest days, when the merger talks felt like a tidal wave ready to crash over them, they leaned on each other, proving that sometimes the biggest changes can bring the richest rewards. One cool evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in a blaze of pink and orange, Xander got down on one knee, right in the middle of their favorite park. The park, with its sprawling oak trees and familiar winding paths, had become their safe haven, a place where they'd laughed, cried, and dreamed together. "Victoria," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart, "I know we've faced more than our share of storms, but every one of them has led us here. I want us to face every future challenge together as partners in life and in love." Victoria's eyes sparkled with tears and joy as she listened. It wasn't just the big gesture that touched her, it was the raw honesty behind every word. She'd always believed in living in the moment, and now here was a man who dared to dream of forever with her, imperfections and all. "Yes," she whispered, her voice soft yet resolute, "yes, I'll be with you through every twist and turn." Their embrace in that quiet corner of the park was more than just a moment of romance, it was a promise. A promise that no matter how rough the road got, they'd keep each other's hearts safe. In the glow of the setting sun, their future looked as unpredictable and beautiful as a summer storm. The merger, the challenges at work, and all the uncertainties of life suddenly felt like mere stepping stones on their shared journey. Together, they stepped forward, hand in hand, ready to take on whatever came next. With the engagement fresh and the merger talks intensifying, both Victoria and Xander began to face a series of tests that stretched their love in ways they'd never imagined. The excitement of their future was tempered by mounting pressures, long hours at work, skeptical board members, and even personal doubts about whether they were truly ready for such a lifelong commitment. Late one evening, after another grueling day filled with tense negotiations and endless strategic meetings, Victoria and Xander found themselves sitting in their quiet living room, the weight of the world pressing in on them. Victoria, ever the optimist, tried to laugh off the tension. "You know," she said, leaning back on the couch with a half-smile, "if we can survive boardroom battles and merger nightmares, I think we can handle a few rough patches at home." Xander, rubbing his temples, replied, "I hope so. Sometimes I feel like the pressure is building up faster than we can release it." Their conversation was punctuated with long silences, each lost in their own thoughts. But instead of letting the stress drive a wedge between them, the couple chose to talk through every worry. They revisited their engagement day in the park, clinging to that memory as a reminder of why they were together. They shared fears, dreams, and even the little insecurities that had festered over time. Through tears and laughter, they learned that the real test wasn't the external chaos, but how they supported each other when things got tough. "I love you no matter what," Victoria repeated as if to seal the promise over and over again. In that moment, with the soft hum of the city in the background, they realized that even the hardest trials could be overcome when love was the guiding force. As the merger negotiations entered a critical hip, ideas, shifting alliances, and unforeseen setbacks piled on top of the daily grind. Victoria's role as a director became even more demanding, and she was forced to make decisions that didn't always sit well with her personal ideals. At times, the boardroom debates felt like a battlefield, with every word and decision leaving marks that were hard to ignore. Outside of work, things weren't exactly smooth either. With the excitement of their engagement still fresh, the couple now had to confront the reality that love and business don't always mix seamlessly. Friends warned them about the dangers of blending personal life with the pressures of a high-stakes corporate environment. "You might lose a bit of yourselves in all this," one colleague had remarked during a late-night strategy session. At home, Victoria wrestled with conflicting feelings. On one hand, she was thrilled to be leading change and forging new paths. On the other, the endless battles made her question if the price of ambition was too high. Xander, who had always been the calm in the storm, felt his own doubts creeping in. "Are we doing the right thing?" he'd ask quietly during their nightly walks, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. But even amid the tension and uncertainty, their conversations always circled back to the core of their bond, a deep, unwavering love. "I love you no matter what" became their mantra, a constant reminder that even at the crossroads, together they could choose a path that honored both their dreams and their hearts. With every difficult decision, they learned that sometimes the toughest roads lead to the most rewarding destinations. The merger discussions hit a rough patch, and the atmosphere in the office turned tense as rumors of layoffs and restructuring spread like wildfire. For Victoria, each meeting felt like a test of her faith in herself, in the company, and in the future she envisioned with Xander. The pressure mounted daily, and whispers of doubt crept in among the staff. In quiet moments, she'd find herself staring at old photos of simpler times, wondering if she'd strayed too far from the heart of what truly mattered. At home, Xander sensed her internal battle. One chilly evening, as they sat together in the soft glow of their living room lamp, he reached for her hand. "We've faced a lot, Vic. Remember, I love you no matter what," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. His words, simple yet powerful, became a lifeline for her. They spent that night talking, not just about the company's fate, but about their dreams, fears, and the uncertain road ahead. Their conversation drifted to memories of the early days of laughter shared over coffee, the light-hearted moments in the park, and the promise they'd made to each other under the open sky. With each recollection, Victoria's faith began to rekindle. She realized that even though the path was rocky and filled with obstacles, their love was a constant that could weather any storm. The office crisis, the impending changes, it all seemed less intimidating when viewed through the lens of their shared journey. With renewed determination, she decided to stand firm in her beliefs, knowing that whatever the outcome, their bond would remain unbroken. Together, they prepared to face the test head-on, armed with hope and a love that was unyielding. After weeks of uncertainty, the day finally came when the board was set to announce the final terms of the merger. The entire company held its breath as key players gathered in a sleek conference room. Victoria sat at the front, her heart pounding in her chest, while Xander watched from a quiet corner, silently offering his support. The tension in the room was palpable. Every eye fixed on the speaker as they detailed the new plan. The announcement was a mix of promises and tough compromises. The merger would mean significant changes in the company's structure, new leadership roles, and some unexpected shifts in direction. For some, it was a dream come true. For others, it was a blow to their established way of working. Victoria felt a swirl of relief, hope, and a hint of trepidation. Could they really navigate this new landscape without losing the essence of what made them who they were? After the meeting, in the hushed corridors of the office, Victoria and Xander found a quiet moment to reflect. "That was it, huh?" Victoria said with a shaky laugh, trying to mask her inner uncertainty. Xander took her hand and smiled gently. "We did it together. I love you no matter what." Those words resonated deeply as they realized that the moment of truth wasn't just about a corporate decision. It was about trusting in the journey they had built as a couple. As the day wore on and the company began to adjust to the new reality, Victoria felt a renewed sense of purpose. The merger wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a new beginning, a chance to build something even stronger. With Xander by her side and the support of a team that believed in change, she stepped forward with cautious optimism. In that decisive moment, she knew that regardless of the challenges ahead, their love would be the anchor that kept them grounded and the light that guided them into a brighter future. In the weeks following the merger announcement, a sense of liberation began to seep into both Victoria and Xander's lives. The new structure of the company, although challenging at first, opened doors to fresh ideas and ways of thinking. For Victoria, the shift was like breaking free from an old mold that had confined her creativity. She started pushing boundaries, introducing innovative projects that not only re-energized the team, but also allowed her to express her true self. Xander, too, felt the stirrings of change in his own life. Having spent so long hiding behind the weight of past regrets and self-imposed limitations, he began to see this period as a chance to redefine his role. Not just as a CEO or a supportive partner, but as someone capable of embracing vulnerability and change. Late one night, after a marathon work session, he looked over at Victoria, who was scribbling ideas on a whiteboard, and felt a surge of gratitude. "I love you no matter what," he whispered to himself, the mantra that had carried him through so many storms now guiding him toward newfound freedom. Outside the office, the shift was equally noticeable. Friends and family remarked on the sparkle returning to Xander's eyes and the boldness in Victoria's laugh. Their relationship grew richer, their conversations deeper as they explored life beyond the confines of corporate stress. Weekend getaways became a ritual, a way to reconnect with the simple pleasures that had first drawn them together. Whether it was a spontaneous road trip or a quiet evening at home, each moment was a celebration of breaking free from the old and embracing the new. Their love, tested by adversity and refined by time, was now a beacon of hope for both of them, lighting the way forward as they stepped boldly into a future filled with endless possibilities. With the merger behind them and the dust finally settling, Victoria turned her focus to rebuilding relationships that had been strained by months of uncertainty. At work, she organized a series of informal meetups designed to mend bridges and foster open dialogue among employees. The goal was simple: create an environment where every voice was heard, where even the smallest ideas could blossom into something transformative. Over pizza nights and team outings, long-held grudges slowly melted away as colleagues found common ground in shared experiences and new ambitions. Xander, who had spent years isolated by his own doubts, now saw these gatherings as opportunities for personal growth too. As he joined the conversations, he realized that rebuilding trust wasn't just about fixing a company, it was about healing the wounds of the past. "I love you no matter what," he would remind himself as he engaged with old friends and allies, finding that the warmth of genuine connection could erase years of loneliness. At home, the couple took on the challenge of reconnecting with loved ones. Family dinners became a time to share stories of resilience and hope, laughter echoing around the table as they recounted memories of simpler times. Victoria's natural ability to bridge divides shone through, her empathy turning tense moments into opportunities for understanding. Even Xander, once so guarded, learned to open up, finding solace in conversations that transcended business and touched on the very core of what it meant to be human. In these tender, everyday interactions, they built a network of support that extended far beyond the walls of the office, a community that celebrated imperfections, embraced change, and believed that every ending was just a new beginning. With the company on steadier ground and relationships mending, a sense of excitement began to creep into Victoria and Xander's lives once again. They started to dream bigger, not just for the business, but for their personal lives too. Weekend trips turned into mini adventures, and even mundane errands became opportunities to explore and create memories. Victoria's creativity seemed boundless as she merged her passion for helping others with her newfound role in the corporate world. She spearheaded initiatives that not only boosted company morale but also gave back to the community, proving that success wasn't just measured in profits but in the positive impact they could make. Xander found himself energized by the new horizons opening before him. The man who once hid behind the shadows of his past was now stepping into the light, eager to embrace a future filled with both professional success and personal fulfillment. "I love you no matter what," he'd say every morning as they started the day together, a simple reminder of the strength that bound them. Their partnership, forged in the fires of adversity and polished by time, was a beacon of hope for everyone around them. They hosted community events, engaged with local charities, and even started a mentorship program within the company to help others find their way. Each new project was a chance to build something meaningful, to leave a lasting legacy that spoke of resilience, passion, and love. As they looked to the future, Victoria and Xander knew that every challenge they'd faced had led them to this point, a place where every horizon was a promise of fresh beginnings and a life lived with an unyielding heart. On a crisp, clear morning that felt like a new dawn, Victoria and Xander found themselves back at the charity event where it all began. The same warm buzz of voices and gentle hum of hope filled the air as they walked side by side, their hands intertwined. Looking back over their journey, from that fateful meeting to the twists and turns of love, business, and everything in between, they couldn't help but smile at how far they'd come. Every hardship, every moment of doubt had only strengthened the bond they shared. Standing together in front of a small stage where a speaker was about to share stories of courage, Xander leaned close and whispered, "I love you no matter what." Those words, simple yet powerful, had been their guiding light through every storm. Victoria's eyes glistened with happy tears as she nodded, feeling that same surge of love that had first sparked their connection. In that moment, surrounded by a community that celebrated hope and resilience, they reaffirmed their promise to each other. They had built a life that was a patchwork of triumphs and setbacks, laughter and tears, but above all, it was real. It was raw. And it was theirs. As the event carried on and new stories began to unfold around them, Victoria and Xander embraced the future with open hearts. They knew there would be more challenges ahead, more crossroads to navigate. But as long as they held on to the truth of their shared promise, nothing could shake them. With one last shared look and a quiet smile, they stepped forward together into a future that was bright, uncertain, and filled with endless possibility.